Now we can go ahead and even though we're in privilege mode, we're now going to go into global configuration. Again, in privilege mode, you can do a lot of your show commands, you can do a lot of ping commands, all right? But you also can do these two commands. And again, like I said previously, you're not going to get tested on it, but at least you know you want to have the clock set, so you know what time and date, maybe an upgrade was done or what have you, all right? Now, the next one, the next prompt, and where's my little thing here? Here we go. Okay, will be global configuration, and we type config T. Now, I'm not going to type the T for terminal yet. I'm just going to hit enter. All right. There are different ways to configure. Configure the terminal, the memory, or the network. And you can see that the default is terminal. Okay. Terminal is where we're at right now. This terminal session. Memory is you want to, let's say, configure right in the running configuration that's already up there, or a network configuration. 9 out of 10 times you'll be doing config T, you'll be configuring within the terminal session that you've just created. That's why that's the default. Again, something to know, doubtful that they're going to go ahead and ask you, very doubtful that they're going to ask you anything like that, okay? But again, just for your own knowledge. Now you're in global configuration, and please pay attention to that. Hey, I went from a pound sign to now there's parentheses, right? Global configuration. They will mess around with stuff like that in the certification. They'll give you proper commands in the wrong prompt. So you got to keep an eye out for that. Make sure, because they all could be the right command, and or even, they'll do the right command with one little minor mistake. Let's say it's missing a hyphen. So be very careful. You got to know these configurations and how that's why I'd rather for you to write it out the long way. I know I take shortcuts, and that's horrible because I'm just so used to it. All right, but I'll try to slow down and put everything the way it should be. All right, because you need to do it correctly on the cert. Anyway, global config. From here is where you can get to interface configuration, sub-interface configuration, line configuration, router configuration. It's from global. You can't get to it. You can't type int and get into an interface. You can't type line from privilege. You got to get to global configuration before you can get anywhere else. So this is the main part right here. This is what affects the router as a whole. So what do you want to get into there? Okay, you can get into the interface. Let's say F0/0, enter. Now you're in config if. That is your interface configuration mode. Now you can put an IP address, you can put a description. If it's a serial interface, you can go inside the serial. If that's going to be the DC portion, which we'll talk about in a bit, all right, that's you're going to be putting in the clock rate. Now, what if you want to go into, if you're going to configure a routing protocol? Well, I like to always go back to global and type, let's say, router, RIP, and now you see the prompt changes to config router. Now you're configuring the routing protocol. Again, the RIP routing protocol. If you're going to configure EIGRP, router EIGRP and whatever autonomous system. If you're configuring OSPF, router OSPF and the process ID. And you hit enter, and then boom, 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 you're in there. All right? The only one that really, that doesn't go into router configuration mode because you're not configuring a routing protocol, let me answer right here if you're doing a static route, which you do IP route. And then IP route, destination network, destination host, next hop address or exit interface. That one you'll always stay in global configuration. So these are prompts you need to be aware of. The lines, what is it when we're talking about lines? What is the line? Line con 0. Well, what is line con 0? Now you see it goes config line. Well, the console line, right? This right here, where is it? Right here, your console line. Okay? Your console line, line con 0, that's it right there. There's only one. There's only one console line, so it's 0. So if you're consoling into your router or you have people logging into your router, you want to make sure that you secure that console line. All right? Auxiliary, unfortunately, the Packet Tracer does not support the auxiliary port, but the configurations are the same. You will go line aux 0. It's only one. So line aux 0. The only different one is the telnet lines. Line VTY. All right? And each router has their determined number of telnet lines. The default are 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 0 through 4 are the default telnet lines right there. But one router can have just 5 telnet lines. Another router can have 180 tunnel lines. Another router can have 1,000 something tunnel lines. All right, and you turn on as many as you would need because of how many people are telnetting or SSHing into your router. Now I'm going to show you how to configure SSH into your router. Some of you may already know. All right, now that they ask you this, they ask you an SSH question based on access list, based on an access list. If you're permitted to SSH or not, which we all know SSH is port 22 and Telnet is port 23, okay? But again, these are the things, these are the lines. Line console, line aux, and then line VTY, okay? So now we've talked about the different prompts. All right, so I'll tell you what, let's go ahead now and let's start configuring this router. Let's set up a little network. Let's close this router. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to delete all these routers. Hey. Okay, and then let's delete all of them. Say yes, yes, thank you. I'll leave this PC right here. Okay, but let's bring out, okay. Let's bring out the 1841, and let's just bring out really just one. We're not doing any routing as of yet. We're just going to do administrative stuff to the router, okay? We're going to do now what I consider, not what Cisco considers, what I consider basic administrative tasks on the router, okay? So I'm going to go through each configuration, each line. I'm going to tell you what it is and why you would need it, okay? So now you know how to get into the router. Again, console port. We're not going to do it through here because then we won't be able to see the font, okay? But we'll do it through the CLI tab. Now you know you need to do a terminal session, all right? But we're going to connect, and we'll bring out a switch also. Try and make it as realistic as possible. All right, let's use a 2960. All right, and let's connect it. I hate working from that side. All right, let's connect it. Now we're going from PC to switch. When we went from PC to router, we needed what type of cable? A crossover cable. What does that mean? 568A on one side, 568B on the other side. Here we're going to use the same 568B on both sides, okay? Because we're connecting a straight through cable to the switch. So we pick our lightning bolt, the solid black line, that's the straight through cable, fast Ethernet, to the very first fast Ethernet port on here, okay? Once we get to the switching chapter, okay, I'll tell you why is it amber, and basically it's just that it's looking to see, hey, am I going to put this port in forwarding, all right? That's why it's taking a while. And from switch to router, same cable, same type of cable. I like to pick the last port, the last fast Ethernet port, I should say, all right, which is port 24 to port 00. Port 24 to port 00, okay? Now, what IP scheme are we going to use? We need an IP scheme, and I'm going to get the place note. I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to go ahead and type, let's use a basic 192.168.1.0 CIDR 24, okay? And let's zoom in so you guys can see it a little bit better. All right, and I'm going to go down, and let's configure the PC first. Now we have, really, okay, I'm too zoomed in. Are you serious? Is that why that's there? Well, let's maximize it then. That's the terminal. Let's close that. All right, we're going to go to the IP configuration. All right, and let's put in the IP address, mask, and gateway. All right, now the IP address that I like to use for host is the first available. And I'm going to tab. It's going to use the default for a Class C. And then the last available I'm going to use for my gateway, 192.168.1.254. We're not worried about DNS or configuring a DNS at this point. All right, let's go ahead and close that. And let's minimize that. All right, so we got our PC configured. Now let's go ahead and go into our router. Okay, and let's maximize our router. There you go. And let's go into the CLI. You see we don't have any serial ports. We're just going to configure the fast Ethernet. All right. Now this router already booted. It went through the process of ROM, flash, NVRAM, and now RAM. We're in the initial configuration dialog, which we're going to go ahead and answer no to. Enter. Now we're in user mode. How do we get to privilege mode? We type enable. We need to configure. Well, the first thing I said we're going to configure is the terminal history size, and we're going to configure the clock, right? So terminal history size. If I can type, it'll come out. And that's 256. And then what we're going to do is the clock, set the hour. What time is it now? 12:38:00, and the day, month, and year. May 1st. What was the day for Buck Rogers? In the year 2025, was it? Let's do that. 2025. I used to watch a lot of Buck Rogers as a kid. All right. And then we go to config T. Oops. Config T. And you see that I still took it. That's one of the things I want you to look at also. Okay? It's one of the things I want you to look at. That even though I only typed part of the command, conf, right, and then space T, it understood there's enough of the command that I type that it understands what I want. But you see that when I type something, it's like, hey, you made a mistake. That's why that caret symbol is there. Okay? That caret symbol is to let you know you type something wrong here. Okay? So be careful. That's all. Don't freak out. That's what it's just telling you. You type something wrong. That's all. Just redo it again. All right. Now, in real world, you could type conf, C-O-N-F. All right. Space T. And that will still take it. All right. Now, don't get too caught up on shortcuts when you get to the store. You got to type the whole thing. But in the real world, you can. You can type as short as you like. All right. Okay. So now let's go ahead and go to one of the first things that you want to do is to go ahead and do passwords. So let's type the privilege mode password. And I'm going to type 2 of them. All right. Enable password Cisco, and let's bring it up a little bit. Enable password Cisco and enable secret student. They're both privilege mode passwords. So what's the difference between one or the other? Well, Cisco, plain text. The student, encrypted. So really, the encrypted one is going to override the plain text one. So why am I teaching you both? Laz, come on, dude. If it's why am I wasting my time typing? Well, you're not wasting your time because one, they're going to ask you that question on the certification, so you need to know it. Also, for whatever reason, which is very rare, but for whatever reason, you need to revert back to an older iOS, and I think the iOS is 11.1 or something like that, that doesn't understand the secret command. At least you have a plain text password that will secure your privilege mode, right? To go to global configuration mode. Or it's not, sorry, it'll secure in order to go to privilege mode, okay? But again, this is basically for certification purposes. I have yet to type, well, that's not true. Basically, when I log in at work, when I type my username and password, boom, I'm already in privilege mode. So again, it all depends on how you want to configure. For test purposes, you need to understand the difference between both. Plain text, and you have the secret, which is an MD5 hash. So it's an encryption about this big, okay, for this particular word, with letters, which are in uppercase, lowercase, symbols, and numbers, okay? So it's pretty good encryption. Again, can it be hacked? Of course, anything can be hacked. That's the question anybody asks. Well, can anybody hack a router? Sure, anybody can hack. The Pentagon has been hacked, okay? It's just how determined people are and how many layers of security you decide you want to set up, okay? But again, focus on what these passwords do. All right, now, if we wanted to encrypt, let's say the Cisco and any other plain text password that may exist or that you're going to write in the router, this is a command that you do. Service, password, hyphen, encryption. Now, that password will be encrypted, and I'll show you. And every other plain text password that I type, it will also be encrypted because of this command. Now, the password hyphen encryption is not stronger than the secret student command. Secret is an MD5, where this one is 7. So it's a lower encryption. I know the number's higher, but that's just the way it is. And just because a higher number doesn't mean that it's a higher encryption. Okay? This is basically just everything in uppercase, letters, and numbers. That's it. Where here it does upper, lowercase, letters, numbers, and then we have symbols. Hint, hint, this is a question that you're going to get asked. Which is a stronger encryption? What are you going to say? Secret. Okay? All right. So again, those are your passwords for that, for pros mode. And then the other one is to go ahead and encrypt every other password. The next thing that we're going to type is a banner. Banner, message of the day. And people normally put the pound sign. You can use whatever symbol. There are symbols that won't allow you to do it. And you're not going to put welcome to router 1, which I never put the host name. Oops, I forgot to put the other pound sign. Let me put the other symbol. Sorry. Because whatever symbol you start with, you have to end with. And that's what it was telling me there. Enter text message, end with character. Meaning, I started with a $sign, I must finish with a $sign. Okay? And I said router 1, but we haven't named the router yet, so we'll go ahead and do that next. Okay? But what this is saying, message of the day. So if somebody's trying to either telnet in or console in, or they're in your router, this gives them, hey, this is a message. Basically, if you don't belong here, get out. Or, hey, today, since you're in here and you are, it's a legal description, basically. And you can add to it saying, hey, today at 1 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and be uploading new configurations on the router. Make sure you do any kind of cleanup on the router, so you can have a little message of the day for your guys or gals that are working in the routers, okay? So they know what is expected to say that day instead of sending an email or what have you. You can put it in the message of the day banner, okay? All right, but one of the key things is for cert is the symbol. Whatever symbol you start with, you end with. Whatever symbol you start with, you end with. Why? This is what they're going to do, and I'm going to open up Notepad. They're going to do this to you. Banner, MOTD, pound sign, call me at extension number 555 if any problem. And the pound, right? So you started it with the pound sign and you ended it with the pound sign. But guess what? You have the pound sign in the middle, in the body of it, right? So guess where your message ended? Right there. That's how they're going to mess with you in the cert. Okay? Yes, you start with what you start with, you finish with, and it cannot be included in the body of the message. So if you know that you're going to type a number and you're going to use the number symbol, well, then don't start with the number symbol. Okay? Use like I did. Nope. Okay? And use the $sign. That way, this is the entire body. And that symbol does not matter because you need to start with it. Okay? So that's how they're going to mess with you with the banner. But it's a very basic command. That's just the banner of the day. Okay? What happened with me was I forgot to put it, and it took me down to the other one. All right. Now let's name the router. Very simple command. Not much to say here. R1. Okay? Now you have the name of the router. No spaces. In the name, there can be no spaces. You'll get an error. Okay? You can put underscores if you want to name the router something big. R1 underscore Miami underscore building 1 underscore whatever. However it is that you want to do it. Or just write it all together. But you can't have any spaces. All right? So we've done the host name. We've done the privilege mode passwords. We've done the banner. We did the source password hyphen encryption. Now, one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to create a username. All right? Username, LDS, which is me. Privilege. What type of privilege? You can get from 1 to 15. 1 being a lonely user, can't do hardly anything. To 15, administrative tasks. If you want to access your router through port 80, and you can by turning on HTTP or HTTPS, okay, you can go ahead and you have to have level 15 privilege. You have to have level 15 privilege. So since I'm the administrator, I'm going to give myself 15. LDS privilege 15, password now 0, and I'll tell you exactly why I did that. Okay, here we're just creating the username, the privilege level, which is 15, powered 0. 0 means plain text, and then the actual password. You can do 0 or 7. 0 or 7. 7 means encrypted. Why didn't I put it there? Because the packet tracer doesn't support it. So I put 0. Now remember, we typed service password hyphen encryption, which means that it's going to encrypt that anyway. And we're going to take a look at it. So now we create a username. You can do that. Now you can create usernames, different levels of privileges that they can have and do in there. What each level of privilege in detail what it is, listen, I don't know. You will need to look that up and say, okay, I'm going to give you this much privilege, level 5, level 6, and see what each one can do. It's just like in Microsoft. You have your users, your admins, and then you can give them, there's certain attributes to each user's permissions. It all depends what you want them to be able to do. Okay, if you're pretty much working in a router, you know, you may not be able, you know, they're not going to give you 15, but they're going to give you enough, let's say level 10, in order to save the IT guys to say, listen, put an IP address in there. Okay, and you should be able to do that. Okay, now let's go ahead and do the next one, which is really turning on IP DNS name resolution. All right, and I'll show you how to do that. Normally, I would tell everybody to turn that off because it's on by default. Because you see me, I fat finger the keyboard constantly. All right, and if you don't have DNS set up, you're going to be sitting there waiting for the router to respond, to send out a broadcast to a DNS server to resolve that particular command you just did. Okay? Now, you can break that. There's a command which is Control-Shift-6. Control-Shift-6. That command will go ahead and break anything that you're in. All right? Tracer, a ping, a request amount ping that's taking forever, or even that domain lookup that it's doing, you can break that using Control-Shift-6, okay? But we're going to go ahead and configure domain lookup, all right? So I'll type this, which I don't need to because it's already on, but I'm just going to show you. IP domain hyphen lookup, and that command will actually turn on domain name resolution, which is already on anyway, but just to show you the command, okay? And then we're going to go IP domain hyphen name, and we'll go cisco.com, okay? All right, that's the domain name we're going to configure. It's going to look for that domain name in a DNS server, and then we're going to tell it where the IP address of that domain or that DNS server. IP name hyphen server, and it's going to be 192.168.1.1. All right, those are the 3 commands that you need to do to turn on DNS name resolution. All right, is turning it on, giving it the domain name we're using, and the IP address of that name server. All right, so now we're also doing this because if you want to SSH, you need to go ahead and type that. Okay, you need to go ahead and type that. Now, let's configure stuff for SSH. You ready? SSH. One of the first things that we're going to do since we're in global configuration before we get to the lines, all right, is go IP, SSH, and really question mark. The only 2 things that we're going to do, there's different versions. We're going to use, if you don't put any version, I'll use version 1. All right, you're going to put authentication retries and timeout. So the authentication retries, I'm just going to tab because if not, we'll be sitting here forever for having, so I can try and type authentication. All right, and we'll do 3. So you have 3 shots to get your username and password. And then we're going to do IP, SSH, and then timeout. And I remember I'm tabbing. That's why it looks like it's automatic. I don't type that quick. All right, and the timeout, the maximum, if you question mark, is 120. All right, so we'll just put 120. All right, now we're also going to go ahead and do crypto. All right, we're going to encrypt this. All right, so we're going to do a crypto. And again, oops, question mark, Question mark, what? Okay, crypto, oh, that's what I thought. Crypto key generate, there it is right there, generate, and then RSA. Now, it won't allow me, you see it says enter, it won't allow me to continue on line. I have to type it in the next line. So crypto key generate, RSA, and then we're going to use the key of 1024 just to make it a little bit more stronger, or a little bit stronger, okay? So I configured DNS for that particular reason, because now when I'm doing the SSH, I have to have a domain name, all right? And I want that to be encrypted as information goes back and forth. So let's do our lines now. Line con 0, which is our console port, password, Cisco, login. Now we want if I don't login, you must put login. It has to be there so it can prompt you to log in. If not, you're not going to get prompted to log in. Basically, all you're going to type in is a password. That's it. Once you put login, it prompts you to put in a password. But we don't want just that. We created a username for a reason. So login local. You put login local, you're going to get a username and password. Okay? All right. So, well, I think I dropped something. Oh, well. All right. So we're going to do exec hyphen timeout 0 space 0. Enter. And then login synchronous. And thank God for tab for that word. Okay? Exec hyphen timeout 00. What is that? 0 minutes, 0 seconds. The first slot right there is minutes. The second slot right there is seconds. If you put 00, it'll never time out. Your session will never kick you out. Because if you don't, the default is 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, if you're not typing anything, boom, it kicks you out. And then what do you got to do? You got to go ahead and log back in and then continue. So 00, hey, it never ends, okay? Now, people ask, well, Laz, what would you do in the real world? Hey, listen, it's up to you. Like I said, if your router, which it should be, in a secure location, if you want to leave it on, that's up to you. I mean, you're going to have you're the IT. You create the policies, the acceptable use policies, right? That say log off of your computer before you walk away. So, hey, guess what? Log off of your router, all right, before you go to the bathroom, before you go to lunch. You don't want anybody just going in there, right? So, again, it's completely up to you what you want to do. Login synchronous. That's a nuisance command, meaning, my God, every time you're configuring stuff on the router sends you, output. All right, it starts popping up things that, you configured this, you turn on that, and it interrupts your typing. As you're typing, here all of a sudden, boom, and then all of a sudden you're down here typing. So it's kind of a pain. All right, so what do? Or, well, I think a lot of people do, is login synchronous, where you don't have to, it won't interrupt your typing. The message will pop up, but it just won't interrupt your typing. Okay, so we got login synchronous. So that's your console. Okay, now let's go ahead and do your VTY. Line VTY, which are your telnet, 0 space 15. Packet Tracer only supports 15 or 16 telnet lines for the simulator. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do password Cisco. And then login local. We'll do the exec hyphen timeout 0 space 0 and then login synchronous. Now, these are your telnet lines. We want to be able to SSH. So how do we do that? Question mark. Question mark is a great thing. The transport. What transport do we want? Okay. Input, define which protocols are used when connecting to terminal. Output, define which protocols to use for outgoing connections. Okay. So basically you input input. I'm going to go ahead and put transport input. And then you have a choice. All, you want to allow everything, or just SSH. We just want SSH. SSH. Enter. That's as difficult as it gets for SSH. But remember, you need to turn on domain lookup. You need to configure domain name, which means you need to go ahead and put in there a name server so you can find it. Okay? Also, you need to encrypt that. So that's why we did the crypto generate key. Okay? for 1024. We don't have to do 1024. You could have left the default at 512. And then, of course, create a username. And then put the, at least the transport input. You don't have to put the timeouts or the retries, but you should. Okay? All right, so let's see what we've configured so far. Let's do WR. No. Do copy, run. Let's do it right. Now, normally you wouldn't be able to do a copy, run, start, all right, from this prompt. The only reason I can do it from this prompt is because I'm typing the do, and this is something new, all right? Before, you had to exit all the way to privilege mode, which in this case, we'll go exit, takes you to global, exit, takes you to privilege, and then you have to do copy, run, start. But the programmers at Cisco said, man, this is taking way too long. These poor individuals, they have to go all the way back out to come back all the way in just because they want to copy something or ping something, right? So they say, hey, let's give them something that they don't have to. So the do. So wherever you're at, you can always do a do copy, do ping, all right? And it works just fine. So do copy, run, start, and then you want to verify, right, that you're doing the copying to the start configuration, and hit enter again, and there it is. So how do you view that? Let's exit. Now we're in privilege mode. Now we're going to do show start. Why start? Why not run? Because I don't want to see what's in RAM. I want to see what's in NVRAM. I want to make sure that I went ahead and copied everything to my NVRAM. So if my router turns off, hey, everything is still there. Okay? So let's take a look at it. All right, here basically is just showing you how many bytes are being used, the version, all right? Service password hyphen encryption is on. Host name R1, okay? Now take a look at the secret. See, it says MD5, or it says 5. All right, and look at the length of that encryption, okay? Look at now what the service password hyphen encryption is actually doing, okay? It's actually encrypting that plain text password right there, okay? But you see that it's not that big at all, all right? Look at the username, right? Didn't I put 0 there? I know I did, but because of the service password, now that one's also, hey, I just did it over there, okay. That one is encrypted, all right? There's your IP domain name hyphen IP domain name, IP name server. You're not going to see IP domain lookup, okay? But you will see these two. All right, don't worry about the next one, at least not yet anyway. We haven't done the interfaces, so there's nothing to see there. There's your banner. And look at your console. Look at this history size. You see that? For when your console ends, 256. Exit timeout, take a look at the passwords. I know that I went ahead and put Cisco, but because of the service password hyphen encryption, it went ahead and encrypted that. Okay? All right. So now let's test it. Let's see how this works. Let me exit out of the router. Now it's telling me, hey, console session now ready. So let's hit enter and see what we see. So, oh, welcome to router 1. There's our banner. What's the username? Login local, right? Okay, L Diaz. Enter. Okay, L Diaz, what's your password? Cisco. Now we're in privilege mode. Awesome. Wait a minute. Laz, what happened to user mode? What happened to user mode? I'm L Diaz. I have level 15 privilege. I bypass what? User mode. I'm now in privilege mode. You see? So, and then I can just start doing what I need to do. All right, now let's test it from the PC. Let's SSH into the PC, into the router. Okay? Oh, I hit it twice, didn't I? Let's maximize it. Let's go ahead and go to the run. And let's do SSH. SSH minus L Diaz, and the IP address of the router, 192.168.1.254. Oh, I put I. Whoops. SSH. I need glasses big time. L Diaz 192.168.1.254. Okay? Really, is the request amount? Connection, host, not responding. Let's see if we can have connectivity. That's good. Let's troubleshoot. Let's troubleshoot. This is what it's all about. 192.168.1.254. Oh, of course we can't. We haven't configured the IP address. We just said that. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. All right, let's do that real quick. Let's go ahead and go into the interface. Now remember, we can't go into the interface from privilege mode. We have to go where? To config T, global configuration. Interface, F0/0, enter. Okay, and now